Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources you're hearing about and, well, we pull out the key insights for you.
Yep, making sense of the noise.
Exactly. And today we're digging into something huge in the tech world, artificial intelligence, specifically through the Apple lens.
Apple Intelligence.
Right, it's their big push, but the question is, can Apple, known for being so methodical, really make its mark in this incredibly fast AI race? The stakes feel pretty high.
Extremely high.
So our main source for this deep dive is an article from WCF Tech. It's got this prominent analyst basically sounding an alarm about Apple's AI future.
A pretty urgent warning from what I saw.
Yeah, that's the vibe. So our mission today, unpack that warning. What's the analyst really saying? Why now? And what does it all mean for Apple and honestly for the rest of us using this tech?
It's moving so fast, it's hard to keep up.
Totally. Think of this as your shortcut to getting the core story without wading through everything. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start with Apple Intelligence itself. It launched with fanfare, right? But where does it actually stand now? Has it hit its stride? Or is it struggling?
Well, the article suggests it's been maybe stuck in a rut, is the phrase used, since it first appeared.
Stuck in a rut. Ouch. What about WWDC 2025? Did that help?
It brought some things. Visually, there was this liquid glass redesign, which sounds slick. And importantly, they did open it up to third-party developers. That's a big step.
Okay, opening it up helps, but what was missing?
That's the key point in the article. What was missing were, quote, significant utility-focused gains. Real, practical improvements.
So flash, but maybe not enough substance yet?
Kind of. The source basically says, look, even with developers joining in, the platform still needs, well, a lot to be done before it is ready to compete against OpenAI and Google.
A lot to be done. That sounds like they're definitely behind the curve.
It points to a significant gap, yeah.
Yeah.
An uphill climb.
Okay, so that sets the stage. And this analyst you mentioned from Wedbush, Daniel Ives, the article highlights a pretty major claim from him.
It does. Ives lays it out pretty bluntly. He says the next 12 months are critical for Apple Intelligence and its growth.
12 months. Wow, that sounds incredibly specific and urgent for Apple.
It really is. Apple usually takes its time, refines things, but Ives is saying that window is closing. Why? Because Apple Intelligence will be the focus of investors next year.
Ah, the investor pressure.
Exactly. So Apple basically has no time to spare to improve the platform. That's the core of his warning. The clock is ticking loudly.
No time to spare. That really hits home. What does this intense scrutiny, this deadline, mean for Apple's strategy? How are they stacking up against the competition right now?
Well, taking that broader view, the article makes it clear that in the, let's call it the real world of AI features people actually use, Apple lags behind Google and OpenAI.
Okay, Google and OpenAI, we expect that maybe. Anyone else?
The article even suggests possibly Samsung as well, particularly on user-centric features.
Samsung too. Interesting.
Yeah. And there's this sense of urgency because, the AI industry is reaching its peak, or at least a major acceleration point.
Right, it feels like everyone's sprinting.
But the iPhone maker has still not made any breakthroughs, not in the way the others have recently.
You know, it's funny, that almost sounds like classic Apple behavior sometimes. They wait, they watch, then they come in with something polished, like the iPhone, maybe the iPod back in the day.
True. That's often been their playbook.
But can that playbook work now? In AI, where things change seemingly overnight, is that deliberate pace actually a liability this time?
That's a really good question. And it ties into another key piece, Siri. Where does Siri fit in all this? The article doesn't exactly give it glowing reviews.
Yeah, Siri's had its struggles, hasn't it?
Definitely. The piece points out it's always been lackluster in the digital assistant space, kind of the weak link in their ecosystem, AI-wise.
And wasn't there supposed to be a big Siri update?
Yes. And this is what the article calls a massive blow to Apple's image. The big personalized Siri experience everyone was waiting for, it's been delayed.
Delayed. Oh boy. When's it expected now?
Looks like early next year, which, given that 12-month critical window,
Yeah.
isn't ideal timing.
No kidding. And you hear people talking, right? I mean, I know I feel it, and I bet a lot of listeners do too. You just want Siri to be smarter, more like those other AI tools.
Absolutely. The article mentions this specifically strong user demand for a better AI assistant. People want something like a dedicated ChatGPT-like chatbot.
Something that can actually do more, not just basic commands.
Exactly. Offer more, perhaps even more than necessary to the end user, as the article puts it. Really showcase intelligence. It just highlights the gap Apple needs to close urgently.
Okay, so they're behind, Siri's delayed, investors are watching, the clock's ticking. What's the solution? What does the analyst Ives suggest Apple should actually do?
His main recommendation is pretty bold, actually. He suggests that Apple's eager move to boost Apple Intelligence could make it acquire AI companies.
Acquisitions. Go shopping.
Pretty much. He argues it would be necessary to gain traction in the field. He feels Apple needs something bigger at hand than it already has.
Bigger than what they've acquired before.
Yeah, he notes that their past AI-related acquisitions have borne little fruit. Either the features were too small, or maybe the tech was used for something else entirely within Apple.
Right, not the big AI leap they need now.
Exactly. So bigger, more strategic acquisitions are needed now.
Does he say which companies they should buy? Like, name names.
No. The article mentions he did not specify the kind of acquisitions Apple should make. So no specific targets mentioned.
But he still thinks Apple can pull it off.
He does express confidence that the company can deliver. It's like saying, you have the resources, now you need the will, and maybe the checkbook.
It puts a lot of pressure on Apple to make some uncharacteristically fast and potentially huge moves then.
Absolutely. The takeaway is clear. Apple has to pick up pace to retain its user base, if not expand it. Standing still isn't an option in this market.
Okay, so the main narrative is catch up fast, maybe buy your way in. But you mentioned WWDC 2025 wasn't entirely AI focused. Does the article offer any alternative view on that? Like, maybe it wasn't a sign of weakness.
Yeah, there's an interesting counterpoint offered. The fact that WWDC 2025 was not an AI-focused event.
Which seemed odd at the time. Maybe.
Right, but the interpretation offered is that this might actually hint. It only goes on to show that the company could be working on something bigger and better for the end user.
Oh, the classic Apple one more thing strategy, but on a bigger scale. Something cooking behind the curtains.
Potentially. It implies they might be foregoing small, iterative updates for a more significant, perhaps platform-level breakthrough later on, playing the long game.
But that brings us back to the earlier question.
Can they afford the long game right now, with that 12-month clock ticking? It's a gamble, if that's the strategy.
So wrapping this up, we have this real tension, don't we? Apple's huge AI ambitions, this urgent need to catch up, defined by that analyst, investor pressure. It all seems to focus on these next 12 critical months.
It really does crystallize the situation. And if you zoom out, think about the bigger picture. What does this whole situation, Apple's position, the analyst's advice, tell us about these tech giants?
How they adapt, or maybe struggle to adapt.
Yeah, exactly. It raises this fundamental question. Can a company as massive, as historically deliberate as Apple truly pivot and accelerate fast enough to lead in a field like AI that changes so rapidly? Or does their sheer size and process become a disadvantage?
That's the core question, isn't it? It makes you think. As you, listening, go about your day, maybe ponder how these next 12 months could genuinely change Apple's place in the tech hierarchy.
And maybe change the AI tools you end up using every day.
Right. Will Apple pull off that bigger and better surprise everyone hopes for, or will this intense AI race prove too fast, even for them? We'll be watching closely.